Okay, so let's jump right in. We're going to be exploring a really fascinating website, LFYadda.com. Now, on the surface, it might look like just a collection of essays about, AI, biology, all sorts of things. But if you dig a little deeper, you find there's this one single unifying idea that connects everything. And that's what we're going to unpack. This right here, this is it. This is the single most important concept we're going to explore. Think of it as the main theme. Everything else we talk about is just a variation on this one powerful, almost poetic idea. It's all about this deep cosmic dance between energy, the raw stuff of the universe, and information, the patterns that give it all meaning. Let's see how that plays out. So, to really get our heads around this big idea, the author gives us a roadmap, 4 core propositions. We're going to walk through each one. First, how life itself is this amazing engine for managing chaos. Second, how intelligence just makes that process way more efficient. Third, and this one's really cool, the surprising role that art plays in all of this. And finally, what it all means for where we're headed with our technology. All right, so let's kick things off with that first big idea. The argument here is pretty fundamental. Life isn't just some random fluke. No, it's a very specific kind of physical process. It's this incredible system for carving out these little pockets of beautiful order in a universe that, as we know, always wants to drift towards disorder, towards entropy. To really get this, you've got to see entropy in 2 different ways. On one hand, you have physical entropy, the classic idea of messiness and disorder in the universe. But on the other, you have information entropy, which is all about uncertainty or surprise in a message. This framework says these are just 2 hemispheres of the same planet. And this is where life pulls off this amazing move, like a kind of thermodynamic judo. It grabs energy to build informational order, like our DNA, and in the process, it exports physical disorder, basically heat, out into its surroundings. And you can actually trace this flow across pretty much every scale imaginable. It all starts with the sun, right? Raw, high-quality energy. A plant grabs that energy through photosynthesis and builds structure. An animal comes along, eats the plant, and uses that energy to power its body. That same energy then fuels neurons in a brain, which can have ideas and invent things, like data centers. And what do those servers do? They're just chugging electricity to create pure, structured information. See the pattern? At every single step, raw energy is being wrangled into a more complex, more orderly form. So that leads us right into our second proposition. And you can see how it builds on the first. If life is all about using information to organize energy, well then intelligence is just the next level up. It's the hyper-efficient version of that same process. This is where we get into how information is literally the blueprint, the instructions that shape everything from living cells to artificial minds. And this right here leads to a pretty mind-bending question. If information is really the core organizing principle of everything, can we actually learn to program reality? The same way we program a computer. And believe it or not, the examples we're about to see suggest the answer is a resounding yes. For the longest time, we thought DNA was the whole story. But this view says, hang on a second. Think of DNA as just the parts list for an organism. It tells you what building blocks you have. But the instructions, the circuit diagram that tells those parts how and where to assemble, that comes from bioelectric signals. It's a voltage map that stretches across the cells. And by manipulating that map, scientists can get a tadpole to grow an eye on its tail. It's literally programmable flesh. Think about that. And what's so wild is that we see almost the exact same thing happening in artificial intelligence. An LLM takes in all these separate words, just tokens, and it arranges them into this complex, high-dimensional map of meaning. In this map, words that are similar in meaning physically move closer together. So the AI isn't just memorizing words. It's programming a space where meaning and relationships just emerge. It's doing with language what a body does with cells. Okay, now we're going to take a bit of a turn, and this is where things get really fascinating. What if our scientific equations and our white papers, what if they aren't the only tools we have to understand all this? LFYadda's whole philosophy suggests that art and poetry in particular isn't just some nice decoration. No, it's another kind of code, a really important one. It's a navigation system for our minds. I mean, just listen to this line from one of the poems on the site. It's a spin on Allen Ginsberg's famous poem, Howl. See? That's not just pretty words. It's taking the language and the raw emotion of the beat poets to talk about something super technical like astrophysics and the brutal pressure of the academic world. It's mixing the emotional with the scientific to give us a whole new way to feel and understand a complex idea. So what's it actually doing? Well, you can think of this poetic science as having three main jobs. First, it compresses really dense, complicated ideas into powerful images you can actually remember. Second, it offers catharsis. It gives us a way to process the downsides of technology, like the environmental impact of crypto. And maybe most importantly, it builds bridges. It uses emotion to invite everyone, not just the specialists, into these really important conversations. And all of this, it brings us to our fourth and final proposition, where we look at the big picture, the cosmic scale. If every form of life and intelligence has to play by the same rules of thermodynamics, managing energy and entropy, then that gives us a totally new lens for thinking about our own future, and maybe even for how we might finally find life somewhere else in the universe. This way of thinking completely flips the script on something like SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The old way is to listen for a deliberate hello message, which is like finding a needle in a cosmic haystack. This new approach says, forget the message. Why not look for the inevitable byproducts? Any advanced civilization has to be manipulating energy on a huge scale, and that would leave thermodynamic fingerprints, unavoidable signatures like waste heat or a planet with a weirdly uniform temperature. These entropy anomalies would be far easier to spot from a distance. So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway? This isn't just some cool thought experiment, it's really a call to action. It's asking us to become entropic stewards, to really consciously think about how our technology, our societies, our choices, how they all fit into that cosmic dance of energy and information. It's about being intentional about the order we create and mindful of the disorder we inevitably leave behind. And so that brings it all back to us with one final question that's really more of a challenge. It takes all these huge cosmic ideas and puts the responsibility right back in our laps. When you think about this framework, everything from the electricity you use to the information you share, how can you act? How can you channel energy and encode information in a way that leaves the universe just a little bit richer, a little more full of beautiful patterns than how you found it?